What do you
Oh my
mean?
God, look at this real estate, $58 million Canadian. Basically, you can have sex in front of it and no one can see.
Yeah, public orgy. That's what we're
Public
chasing for.
orgy. Okay, we're definitely taking that one out. Wow, you went to the next level. It's beautiful. Um,
Yeah, you have your
okay,
own
wow.
naked beach in your home, so that's
Thank
basically.
you. It's very on theme. Okay, it's got wood, it's got stones, it's got water, and it's got like plants all over. It's basically a panda sanctuary. Seriously looks like it. I'm not even kidding.
Yeah, it
It's so
suits us
nice.
very much, I guess.
Yeah, maybe I don't think we can even afford 1 square foot on that property.
You
Not
you
1 square
you
foot.
never know if the owner likes panda.
Maybe. We'll
Maybe,
see.
we'll see.
Uh,
All
so
right.
so ridiculously expensive. Why?
I know. So, Jaden,
Yeah.
what's our topic today? Oh, sorry. Welcome to Pondering Pandas.
A podcast where we ponder about the modern, confusing world and try to make sense of it all. We are your host. My name is Jaden.
My name is Ryan.
Hey,
Yep, I
Ryan.
I think this episode is definitely confusing enough for us to discuss.
And
So,
expensive. And
yeah,
expensive.
it's very
Very
expensive.
expensive.
Yeah. So apparently for the 58 million house you just described, we
Yeah.
can have 5 bedrooms and 7 bathrooms. So that would be
9,944 square foot waterfront property.
yeah. For 5 people. Yay.
For 5 people. Oh my God, it's so beautiful though. Oh my God. It's gonna take me like 10 generations to make that much money.
You never know. You never know if the owner likes pandas.
Mm,
we
yeah,
can we
we'll
can
bribe them with pandas. Okay, I need to get off this website because this
uh-huh.
website is very addicting. Because looking at these properties, I'm just like dreaming panda over here.
Yeah.
Dreaming panda.
So what's our topic today?
Canadian real estate market.
Wow. It sounds like a
Why are
very
we talking about this? I am not an expert.
that's a great question. I feel like that we definitely have very expensive real estate. And
Mhm.
I just realized that, or I just see people. Uh, Let me put it this way. So we have very big price tags and surprising like prices, but I'm looking around. I don't see many people can afford them. So that's something I feel like very confused. I want to learn from you regarding if we can find someone can afford them. So I can have my puzzles resolved.
Mm,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Well, do you think Canadian real estate is expensive?
Depends where you are.
Mm,
And the most desirable space in Canada, such as Vancouver and Toronto, then
yeah.
sorry, Toronto, then it would be then it would be very expensive.
It,
Everywhere else, not really.
is that an English
Comparatively.
accent?
Sorry?
Is that English
Tro-
accent?
no, people from Toronto, they don't say
Toronto.
Toronto. They don't say Toronto. Correct me if I'm wrong. They say
Oh,
Toronto. They like the other T is silent. It doesn't exist.
look at you, local knowledge,
No,
expertise.
no. I'm a London lad now.
So the Vancouver and Toronto. Sorry, I'm trying.
Okay, just say it
Vancouver,
however you say it.
yeah, Vancouver and Toronto have like the highest pricing for the houses for sure. But
Yeah.
I would say that's so expensive, even like for you know if you look at the comparison between the house prices versus the income of the local people.
Hmm.
So it's crazy. We have a median income of I think around like 70,000 Canadian dollars per year, which is around like 50 something US dollars per year for both cities. And we have the price of the house of like around 1 million per each city. So which
I
is
don't
like
think
20.
I don't think you can find a house in Vancouver for 1 million. Like
Yeah.
if you do not have an approval mortgage for a total buying power of at least 2 million, don't think
Hmm.
about it. Don't
Yeah,
think about it.
I agree. So from the data, it says 1 million, but from our daily experiences in Vancouver and Toronto,
Toronto.
Toronto, okay, I'm learning.
Okay, just say Toronto, it's fine.
Yeah. So basically, from our daily experiences from Vancouver and Toronto, uh, it's 2 million. It's 2 million. It's
At
it's
least.
like at least right. You cannot find a decent house without screaming that it's nothing or it's broken or it's only buying a land without saying like, oh, it's at least 2 million. I think that's the situation we are at now. So I do see some like older listing that the house is probably over 100 years. They can be lower than 1 million, but that's not something we see today, or that's not something people are buying the house to live, at least for me. So
So
it's kind
I'm
of
I'm actually
crazy.
sorry. So I'm actually looking at the listings right now
Yeah.
at the time of this recording, and I put
Uh-huh.
maximum of 2 million for a house. There's actually
Uh-huh.
quite a few options. It depends where you are.
Yeah.
Um, but nothing, yeah, if you don't have at least more than 1.5, don't think about buying a house.
Yeah.
I don't see
But
anything lower than that, is what I'm saying.
yeah, but for the 1.5 ones, they usually are not that desirable.
They're they're very old school. They're
Yeah.
very singular, like, a triangle on top with a rectangle on the bottom type of house.
That's a great way
Is
to
how
put it.
That's how I would describe it, you know?
Yeah, that's amazing. So actually, we're finding more data now. So I'm staring at one website. It's saying like comparing the affordability between the U.S. and the Canadian like cities in terms of the affordability of the housing. So with no surprise, I do see Vancouver and Toronto on top six, and I need to figure out this calculation more. But apparently, from the data, the average house price in Canada is 20% more than US,
Wow.
but we have maybe 30 or 40% less of the average income compared to the US. So with two things added up, we basically have a huge gap.
Like a lost-lost situation for
Yeah.
those who, yeah.
So I just don't understand because looking at this chart, like for sure I can see San Francisco have worse affordability issue compared to Vancouver because they have a higher house price around like 1.3 million US dollar. So that's the median price. But look at the median income. They have around 130,000 US dollars per year for the median income compared to 58,000 US dollar in Vancouver, which is more than double. So
Mm.
from this data, I'm not sure how they are calculating affordability based on that and say like San Francisco is higher. I'm sure like it's definitely there's some scientific proof behind that. I'm not going to question that. But for me, it feel like if you I only looks at those numbers myself, it feels like San Francisco have double median income, but their house price is only like a third more expensive than Vancouver. So that's how it looks to me. Looks
Right,
like.
right.
So it's quite crazy, right, Jaden?
It is. It doesn't, numbers wise, it doesn't really make sense, like how the gap kind of got so big. I mean, hold on, we do know why the gap kind of got so big, but it doesn't make sense. But it doesn't make sense like where we're at right now. And a lot of people are kind of saying it is a housing bubble market
Hmm.
right now, especially for the most premium locations of North America.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think, how do I say this? Like the
Hmm.
premium pricing for these parts of the cities,
Yeah,
there's
it's
this
fine.
like artificial um premium price to live in a city
Hmm.
because an individual um wants to be able to get something from that
Hmm.
environment, right?
Hmm.
So whether it's because all your friends are there, whether it's because the quality of life is great, or whether it's like lots of food options, lots of culture, lots of things to do,
Hmm.
every single metropolitan city in the world is basically kind of like this.
Yeah,
I- Is it
I
not?
agree. Yeah, I agree. I feel like the city is definitely more expensive and the property price is definitely higher. But I'm just saying, like, seeing the comparison here and seeing like Vancouver and Toronto as the top cities, and
Mm.
especially based on this chart, like they're both more expensive than New York City. I just feel like it's a little bit ridiculous regarding. I'm fine with the premium, but why they're so much more expensive than they're supposed to be in a way?
When I think about New York, I think
Yeah.
about apartments and condos.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then when I think about Canada and like potentially the rest of the United States, when we think about properties, we think about individual standalone detached houses. They have front
Mm-hmm.
yards, backyards, and side yards, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so in terms of land, you get quite a bit more than what other places comparatively say New York, because it's basically the size of New York is like is done. Like that's all there is to it, and the only way they can go is upwards. It's similarly to Hong Kong and um, other metropolitan cities where there's height restrictions as well. So, in terms of detached homes, a lot of the metropolitan cities don't really have that. So, I think being in the metropolitan city in Canada, such as
Mm-hmm.
Vancouver and Toronto, we don't have the population to be considered a metropolitan, like a mega metropolitan city,
Mm-hmm.
but
I agree.
the price of it is definitely comparable to those cities
Yeah.
like New York, London. Um, yeah, those are the
But
only two cities I can say because those are the only two cities I've been to. I don't know what Hong Kong is like, but I hear Hong Kong is very, very expensive as well.
Hong Kong is
And
crazy.
yeah, and all they can do is go upwards. There's no such thing as detached houses unless you're ridiculously rich. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not an average person. But for some reason, and somehow, a lot of people kind of make it work. And I think this kind of ties into like our previous conversations about mortgages and getting into
Mm-hmm.
debt. So
Yeah.
it's like getting yourself into the debt as high as possible to
Mm-hmm.
be able to attain this piece of, some people call it assets, some people call it liability,
Yeah.
to this physical thing that they could potentially own, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I
It,
don't know where I'm going with this, but like that's just how it is right now.
yeah, that's fair. I feel like it's definitely very common that for people to see people are working their best to have the mortgage and to trying to get as much as possible. That's at least what we saw from the past years in Canada, especially. I feel like people are crazy about investments and crazy about buying a house, especially when we have such a low like interest rates before the pandemic or like during the early phase of pandemic.
Yeah.
people are like, oh, it's free money, right? You just get all the leverages and mortgages and just buying all the houses and condos, and such a great investment for you. But I think later people encounter like the flexible rates, or people like just face those hikes of the rates, and they are taking a big hit afterwards. Do you know like what's the current mayor's Vancouver mayor's campaign slogan back then?
No idea.
Yeah, it was like he was saying like, "Oh, we have a city with the house price of Bay Area, like the San Francisco, whatever. But at the
Okay.
same time, we have the no offense, but we have the Kansas salary, Kansas City salary." So that's how he described the whole situation. You know,
Okay, interesting.
so apparently, like it's definitely he see this as a problem,
Mm-hmm.
and there's something like he gets his votes and he got the popularity. Um, but I don't see this trend is ending. I don't see like many things are changing after after this. I just want to highlight that based on the data, at least Canadian real estate market is definitely higher than US if you compare, or it's less affordable compared to the US. If you compare, like if you compare the median like income and also the property price. And I agree with the premium, but I mean, like, Florida is also a famous city for retirements and for entertainment and for enjoyments, right? So it
Mm-hmm.
has like more affordable houses and stuff, in there. So I just feel it's interesting to say.
Here's the thing, though. You don't have to live there.
Yeah.
You don't have to live in these cities. Like other parts of Canada is very, very cheap. But is it desirable to live there? Like I personally do not have a desire to work to live in um anywhere else other than Vancouver or Toronto
Mm-hmm.
if I were to go back to Canada. Maybe like some neighborhood suburb city around Vancouver and Toronto is fine, but I would like to be within the vicinity of it.
I think it's
So
definitely yeah. I think it's definitely makes sense, but at the same time, I'm just wondering like for young generations, they need to have a job, right? I think for many people, if they are chasing for a certain career, especially if they are doing like finance or they're looking for jobs like this, they
yeah,
kind of have to be in Toronto. That's the only choice they have in this case.
true.
And and also in Vancouver, similarly, you potentially have more job opportunities.
If you have more experience.
Yeah, if you have more experiences. So that's something I feel like I just don't know how. Yeah, but how do I put it? So I do see, just align with your points here. I do see many people are fleeing out of those places and to a more affordable places like Calgary and also Montreal potentially, and different cities. But
Isn't Montreal pretty pricey as well?
it's more affordable than Toronto, at
Oh,
least.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's definitely pricey, but it's more affordable. I guess the confusion part is that like how a young person could ever start their career and be living a life and have a house, a home in all those cities. I feel like it's almost impossible.
I think that's the answer. You can't really have it all unless you have help from your family and whatnot. And if you're in that lucky position, then yes. But if not, then there is going to be requiring some, uh, I guess, sacrifices. You'll have to live with roommates. Okay, the first time I moved to Vancouver
Mm-hmm.
myself, I lived in a one bedroom apartment where the My landlord took the bedroom itself. Me
Mm-hmm.
and another person were taking the living room. So like we were sleeping on the opposite ends of the living room,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and we were paying, I don't know, I don't remember how much it was, like maybe like $600 or $700 a
Yeah.
month.
Yeah.
And that was my living condition when I first moved there to to start life. And because I had, work terms I need to complete for uni, so that's what happened. And
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
answer the question, like, can I have my own bed, my own studio, my own bedroom? I don't know. It depends on your budget. You'll have to play around with your budget. And if your requirement is like, no, I have to live in Vancouver and these are the things I'm willing to sacrifice, I think these are the type of compromises that you are going to face.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you will have to reconsider your must-haves and could-haves.
Yeah. I totally agree. Also, it brings up the question regarding if you come to a city for a better life or for a better job. So, how do you see some people just choose to go to the US directly instead of like go to Canadian cities and to find a similar job with higher pay, but and also less life expenses?
I could be very biased towards this conversation or
Mm-hmm.
this question because I much rather live in Canada than in the
Mm-hmm.
US due to the political climate, but depends on what your opinions are in politics, then maybe those are the things that you don't really mind. And depends where your values are. Like if you don't care about making $20,000 less and then being in the US, or no, sorry. If you care about making $20,000 more and being
Mm-hmm.
in the US and you're okay in that type of environment to thrive, all the power to you. So it really depends like what you are really looking for in that moment. Or maybe you're okay with it in a short-term basis and then maybe you
Mm-hmm.
can come back and you can gain the experience in the US and then come back to Canada or something like that. So that's also a viable option. I can understand what you're trying to say in terms of
Yeah.
like the job market in the US is so much um I I don't know if competitive is the right word, but in terms of salary is a better
Mm-hmm.
option for a lot of professions, especially in tech, right? Or even in healthcare, for example, like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
doing, yeah, if you're a doctor, you would make so much more money in the
Mm-hmm.
States compared to Canada. And I guess you just have to, I don't know. That's a really hard question, but I think it's not making itself super attractive by, I don't know if policy is going to change anything,
Mm-hmm.
but unfortunately, those are the most desirable places to live. Like the rural areas of Canada need service as well. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think there are certain programs in healthcare at least. There
Mm-hmm.
are certain programs to like promote that type of people to go,
Mm-hmm.
doctors and nurses and allied health professionals to go to these rural areas to work for X
Exactly.
amount
Yeah.
of years. Like there are these incentives that are available if you are interested, but I don't know what to tell you, man. Like I don't think there's answers to this topic or any of
Mm-hmm.
these questions, but these it's more of like this is what you're willing to sacrifice and what are you willing to compromise on? And what are your other options that you're able to live with in the short term or long term?
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel like it's definitely a personal choice, and people can choose their hearts, as we discussed before, regarding like how do you want to evaluate your value and how do you want to live your life accordingly. But I guess I'm just trying to say, in my personal opinion, I feel like if people are doing their life decisions based on like financial like valuations,
Yeah.
there's a more likelihood that they will feel like living in those Canadian cities or the big cities to be a very struggling or challenging options at the moment. We are seeing some of the squeeze in recent years because of the high inflation and interest rates and property tax raises. It's not necessarily the raises, but more like over the years, you have the evaluation of your house goes up,
Yeah.
and apparently accordingly the house owners and homeowners will be paying more property taxes accordingly. So
Yeah.
I feel like that's a squeeze for those early time homeowners as well, especially in those like really expensive regions where I think we just checked before the show, before this like recording, like some of the areas have a house price minimum starting at 4 million or 3.5 million, and those like crazy high price tags and starting points.
Yeah, it depends on
So
the area.
yeah, so if they purchased those houses like earlier, like 20 years ago or even 30 years ago, the price can be around like 1 million or at that region. So basically their property taxes increased by 4 times as well.
But their profit has increased if they do sell it.
Yeah, if they do sell it. And if they are yeah, but I do assume that many people are designate those places as their primary, resident. But I do see like many people trying to sell this out. So yeah,
Okay,
maybe we can add this out.
I
Yeah.
I do have some reflections on this squeeze. Okay, like this
Mm-hmm.
squeeze recently as interest rate for the property owners that has gone up. My mom's property, um, her mortgage rate has significantly increased because of how much the interest rate has gone
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
You know, previously
Mm-hmm.
it was at a comfortable rate where she can afford it with her own income.
Yeah.
And now she basically needs to rely on a rental person to help
Mm-hmm.
with the mortgage, right? So a lot of these bills kind of like get pushed aside, and then other things such as like credit cards and other types of credit gets accumulated
Mm-hmm.
because of this um stacking of cost that just inflated for no reason, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the income sometimes is kind of fixed. You sometimes can't really increase it because of certain reasons, but there's only so much you can do about it. Like you don't want to lose your house. I don't want my mom to lose her house because she worked really
Definitely.
hard for it. But at
Definitely.
the same time, it's like, well, this is how the market is going. So like there's nothing that we can do about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It's a very unfortunate situation, right?
yeah. And but you can also argue that like my parents bought the place back in 2000. So
Mm-hmm.
it it would have gone up like significantly a lot more, right? It definitely has, but like we haven't, there's no plans to sell it or anything like that. Here's the other interesting thing that I learned about the home market and debt accumulation.
Mm-hmm.
Very
Yes.
interestingly, at least for
Yes,
me,
please.
the the way that how the inflation of your assets has increased, your bank. So, for example, you bought this house for $1 million today, okay? And then you somehow 5 years later, it increased to a property value of $1.5 million for
Mm-hmm.
some reason. That's really, really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Because your value of your house have increased to $1.5 million, the bank is able to lend you even more money
Yeah,
to do whatever it
refinance.
is that refinance for you to
Yeah.
do whatever it is that you want to do. You can potentially use that money to go buy another house, or
Mm-hmm.
you can use that money to go start a business, or you can use that money to, I don't know, do whatever. But that money is going to be refinanced into as a mortgage.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So this like really interesting way of funneling and managing the money with a property in Canada. And I'm sure it's like that in the rest of the world too, but I
Hmm.
think because of how significantly it increased in Canada,
Hmm.
it allowed this accumulation of debt and increase of values of property a lot more as one of the factors as well.
Yeah, I can echo that points for sure. I feel like it's definitely a very classic like real estate investment game for it's a very classic one. So I feel like many of the big real estate owners, like the many like developers and billionaires, and they are basically
Yeah.
doing this. So they basically have uh like how the author of the Rich Dad and Poor Dad say, he says just never sell your property because if you sell your property, your profits will be taxed. But if you just borrow against your property to have the debts, and debts is tax free, so you basically only have the interest rates on that. So that's definitely a very positive trick. If you get in the market early, you have the snowball rolling, and you become a really rich in the end. But
But
I
what I
think
don't understand is like how do you pay it back?
yeah, so the key idea of this game is that you have positive cash flow. Is that after you are buying a new property, you just basically rent it out, or you have some management. Basically, it's just renting, either like commercial or like residential. So you
Yeah.
either you're renting to individuals, or you are renting to those like companies as a commercial building. So so
So I get all of that. So what
yeah.
happens when the interest rate has like today? Like what happens
Hmm.
when the interest rate goes up and then you don't have a positive cash flow? Like what do you want to sell your house now? Does that make sense? Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
there's like at a certain point it does make sense to buy the house, get the positive cash flow, increase the value, borrow against the first property that you have, rent it out, and then do it again on the second one, and then third one, and then fourth, fifth, so on and
hmm.
so on.
Hmm.
But when the interest rate right now has increased so much to the point where it's past the market price of rentals, for example, then you
Yeah,
can't cover your mortgage, you
yeah,
can't cover your landlord expenses. I'm at a bounding that's like, okay, well, like what do we do now? Like, do we sell this place? Do we keep the place? Keep hoping for the best?
yeah. So you actually touched the most key point. So kudos to you. I feel like that's. I think the key point is that it's whether you're buying an asset or liability. So it's actually depends on if you have the negative cash flow or the positive one. So actually,
Mm,
if you have a positive cash flow, it's an asset. But if you cannot have a positive cash flow based on this investment, it's actually a liability. It's actually
true.
transits. So actually you mentioned a very important point here is that in today's Canadian real estate market, it's really hard for any assets or for any like houses to have a positive cash flow
Okay.
because of the interest rates and everything. So that's why I see this is a challenge for people because I can see for the past years, at least past 10 or 20 years, we have many people influxing into the Canada as an investor, and they're buying those like real estate as an investors, and they have the foreign like money, or they are have their own interest and trying to invest the market. But now we are in this situation that it's no longer attracts the investors with the current interest rates. Maybe in the future, maybe after 1 or 2 years, things will become better, or it will have a better interest rates accordingly. I don't know. But currently, the whole market is freeze because it no longer attracts the investors. And apparently, they are the dominant players in the real estate market, and that's causing the confusion or causing the concerns I have. Is that I feel like if this market is no longer supported by the investors, then I don't know who can actually afford it as a normal person. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but I'm just
No,
that's
no, no.
my
It
point.
does make sense. It
Yeah.
does make sense. There's no answers to this right now. Um, accept and wait to see what happens in this like pondering situation, right?
I can give you a real life example.
Do it.
Yeah, so I have friends with the similar backgrounds, which is international
Really?
students.
You've got friends.
Yeah, I got friends. Surprise. Yeah. So so
Congrats.
so they're in this status like we are like having a steady career and we're just trying to have a family and then we are naturally wanting to buy the property. So
Mhm.
with one of my friends' situation is that he purchased this condo maybe like 3 or 4 years ago when the interest rates it was really low. And he basically at the time because the interest rate was really low, he can actually have a mortgage like equals like 10 times of his salary, which is like if we just doing like a average calculation of like the median price because I don't want to mention his salary. So the median like salary of Vancouver has is around like 700 sorry 70,000
Yeah.
per year. So that's the
Yeah.
average. So back then if it times 10, that's basically you can buy a condo with some like mortgage with some like down payments. You can basically qualify for this category. And that's what he did. He basically just buy a condo and he's just trying to pay everything off. But once the interest rate hikes and the monthly payment becomes purely interests he would be paying. So
Hold
the
on. That only depends on what kind of contract you have signed in
yeah,
terms of interest.
but many people have flexible ones.
Hold on. Okay, my family has never done flexible interest before.
Yeah.
Why is flexible interest such a good thing?
Because it's when the interest rate was so low and people believe this quantitative, this money printing will continue and they will say like the low interest maybe like forever. So I'm not saying it's a smart choice because it depends on like how you evaluate things and how you see things happening. But sometimes because your interest rate is lower, it gives you more room to borrow more money as a mortgage. So if your interest rate is higher, maybe it will squeeze your capability to borrow money. And this one also one of the factors. So I'm just saying there are a healthy portion of the quantity of the people who just did the flexible interest rates.
Yeah,
They
variable interest rate. Yeah.
Yeah, variable interest rate. They were really fucked up during the past of several years.
Yes.
My friend, as an example, like
Hmm.
he put a decent amount of the down payment, maybe like 20% or 30%. I don't know the details, but he put a down payment, which is a lot of money. And for the past 3 years, he had been paying the interest rates only.
Yeah, so not paying down the prime.
Yeah, he's not paying for the condo anyways.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
imagine that. Basically, you just throw a lot of money with the down payment, and essentially you are renting a house or renting a home.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Like what are you supposed to do at that point? Like are you supposed to sell it?
No, I don't think. I think the only option is for them to hang on there to see how if things will improve because people will know like okay the interest rates will eventually go down. It will never going to be like this high forever. But also we will realize that it's unless it goes back to like 0% interest rate again, right? Now we
Was it
have
ever
like
zero?
it's I think during pandemic or around that era, it's 0 or 0.5 around
Really?
there.
I thought it was always like 2 point something.
2 point something is the fixed rates.
Oh, okay. That
It's
maybe that's why. Because my parents always talk about 2 point something, so that's why it's always fixed
yeah,
rates for
yeah.
us.
It's like one of the reason why people pick the flexible one is like if during the like the low interest eras, if you pick the flexible ones, you have like really close to zero. But if you pick the fixed one, it goes to like 2 or 3 or something like this.
I see.
So that's why people are like making their choices, right? I have no
Learn
comments on
some,
that part.
learn something new.
But I'm just saying, well, their position is really hard, and I'm just saying for like the young generation or for the young people, even though they got a family supports, but their income may not be help them to qualify for the mortgage that enough to support those condos or the price, right? So if you are buying a condo like the 2 bedroom condo here in Vancouver and Toronto, I think some places can be over a million, and let alone like 3 bedroom ones or even a townhouse that will be much higher. So many people cannot qualify that with their own income. So they need to have find a partner to do so. And in this case,
E-
we're only yeah
Even then, you might not be able to qualify.
yeah, and we're talking about like 10 times during the low interest rate
You know
era.
what? I have a solution. Find a bunch of friends and combine 10 incomes, and then find a really, really big house with 10 bedrooms, and problem solved.
Yeah, I think that's the only way, to be honest. Because now I recently checked with one of my friend, and he said if you borrow the money now as a mortgage from the bank, it's only 5 times of your salary. So so for most people, you cannot buy anything.
Did you know that mortgage comes from, I think it is a French word called death contract?
Really, that's contract.
Yeah, according to this little fact app that I have that sends me facts like every other hour or something.
Wow.
Okay? Yeah, we're all in death contracts in Canada. Um, Not the rich ones at least. The hardworking people, the middle class. I have friends that have six-figure salaries and they're just not able to save up for an apartment
Yeah.
because the rent is so high in Vancouver. Like, yes, they could potentially go live in a $600 a month with three people, but like when you're at that salary, it's not very reality to do that, right? Like if you
Yeah.
have like life already kind of figured out or
It,
planned out, like you want to be able to live by yourself, you want the freedom. So
yeah.
high rent is the only viable, livable thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you kind of want to. I think the lifestyle inflation is very fair to me, even though like many of the so-called like financial advisors are suggesting against it and say like, oh, you need to save more money. But as you said, realistically, who will live that if you feel like you want to reward yourself, right? So
Yeah, you only have one life. You gotta do what you gotta do. Hold on. Okay, I have a question. If there is a housing market crash, like
mhm.
what is that going to look like for the houses are going to go down, the values are going to go down, the property taxes would go down. Would people start selling their houses or would would they try to keep it?
I'm not sure exactly how it works in the banking system. I assuming like many of them will. I mean, if it works similar to the stocks, it
Mm,
probably would be like many banks would see the value of the property are losing its value, and so
yeah.
they may just tell their clients with the mortgages, say like you need to give us more money or even more like the what's the word? 抵押 is
Like a down payment, like a deposit?
yeah, more something like value to prove you can afford or anything. So that basically the mortgage is like you are using your house value against the money you borrow, right? So they're
Oh, I
similar.
see. Okay,
Yeah,
so like if the value, say you bought it for $1 million and
yeah,
then like next year it crashes down to $500,000.
Yeah.
Because your mortgage is at $1 million,
Yeah.
then they will reevaluate your income
Yeah.
to your mortgage against the value of your current house, and
Yeah.
then to determine whether or not you can afford it. And if you can't afford it,
They may take
they'll
it.
they'll they'll just take it back. Oh my God,
They
what?
may take it because I'm not sure that's how in real life these things would be
Hold
working.
on. Let
Because
me let me just AI this shit. Let me let
yeah,
me
yeah, please, please, because I'm
I'm so
using
curious.
a stock market example here. So if you are borrowing money to invest or buy the stocks, so if the stock lose value, you will face the margin call because you will need to provide more assets or the liquidity to prove that you can pay back the money you borrowed. I think that's the same like idea that why, as you mentioned before, regarding if you have the appreciation of your house values, you can refinance and borrow more money. So that's the same reason because you have more like value on the paper you can borrow against. So assuming like if in the downfall term, the situation can be reversed as you described.
Okay, so based on current understanding of the recent analysis, if Vancouver homeowner buys a property of $1 million and the house market crashes the following year,
Mm-hmm.
several potential scenarios. This is
Yeah.
according to ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Negative equity. So the home's market value may drop significantly, leaving the homeowner owing more on their mortgage than the property is worth. Okay. This can limit refinancing options and making it difficult to sell without incurring a loss. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes
Um,
sense. Yeah.
Refinancing challenges. With a lower property value, lenders may be less willing to refinance or offer favorable terms, increasing financial pressure on the homeowners.
Mm-hmm.
And then increased financial stress is a sharp decline of property value can impact the homeowner's net worth and borrowing power potential, leading to financial strain or the need to cut back on their expenditures. Potential for forced closure risks. If the homeowner's financial situation deteriorates due to the reduced equity and refinancing difficulties, they could be at increased risk of defaulting on mortgage payments, potentially leading to foreclosure. Market liquidity issues. In a cap, wow. Market liquidity issues. In a crash, even if the homeowner wishes to sell, the market might be slow and the properties could take longer to sell, often at significantly reduced prices. Okay, these make sense to me.
I just wonder like if the banks would take it directly. I think that's something happened in the 28 financial crisis in the US. I think that's what happened. It's actually there's many people are defaulting because the banks decide to lend the money to the people can't afford them. So when those defaulting are happening, so there's a squeeze in the market and the cost the crush of the house markets. And many people are losing all their houses accordingly. Yeah. But I'm just not sure if you are able to just continue to make payments. I think it should be fine. So for many of the homeowners, maybe that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, so banks tend to tighten their lending criteria or refinancing, which can make it much more difficult for homeowners to secure favorable terms or
Mm-hmm.
even to qualify at all.
Mm-hmm.
So here are some key points: stricter lending standards, negative equity issues, increased interest rates and fees, loaning restructuring, access to home equity. It doesn't really say about um, taking the home as much, but I'm
Yeah.
sure it can happen if
Yeah.
you are not able to make the payment. Because I guess
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess the
So. Mm-hmm.
mortgage, though, at a risks perspective, the banks would look at like how much your property is valued at. If anything were to happen, they
Mm-hmm.
could take that property um and
If
do
you
whatever they
cannot.
want with it. Yeah,
Yeah.
if you cannot pay for it, then like they don't want to have the debt as well. So like they need to make sure that this risk for them to continue on makes
Mm-hmm.
sense for them, right?
Yeah.
Very, very rough.
Yeah, because if you see at the 2008 financial crisis in the US, it's essentially a crush for the banks because the banks are lending the money to support the real estate market and to realize that the real estate market crushes. So the bank's assets and their cash flow and everything is being affected because the people cannot pay for the down payments. Oh, sorry, people cannot pay for the payments for their mortgages, and their houses are losing value. And even the banks are taking back those houses. They cannot really resell it or to so-called to liquefy those assets to make sure they have a balance sheet, balance whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Mm-hmm.
a situation. It's essentially a squeeze not only to the individual but also to the financial system, to the banking system. So that's why you see many of the banks are going bankrupt during their era in the US.
I think it's interesting comparatively to the States and Canada though, because
Yeah,
Canada's like major market is the banks,
yeah,
the properties,
yeah,
the utilities, and resources. So
yeah,
that's literally what Canada makes money from. So
yeah,
if any of these falls, like I have no idea what's going to happen, but
yeah.
in the States, it was a little bit different.
In the States, they have much smaller players in the banking system. So that's
Yeah.
why it's really high risk. But you know what happened in the 2008 in Canada? So how Canada survived this? Make a guess.
They got a payout, right?
Yeah. So basically, don't quote me on this. I can be totally wrong, but basically, just governments, because we have five giants of the banks. So we have very like centralized the banking system.
Yeah.
So it's really easy for government to decide to like we want to save all of them. We want to make sure they have the liquidity, and we want to make sure that they have enough money to protect themselves.
Yes.
So it's basically a government bailout with all the money influx and all the additional supports they got from the
Oh, can they
banks.
bail me out? Can they bail me out?
I hope so. I hope so. But I think I saw one of the charts. It's regarding like because during the 2008 the US real estate house market crisis, so it has some downturns. It has a huge crush and before it climbs back gradually. But since Canada doesn't have this correction or the crush, it just keep going up, and then that's why the gap is going bigger over time. I think that contributes to the fact that when we are discussing in the first place regarding why Canadian real estate is so much more expensive than the US compared to all those. I think this is one of the factors. I don't know. I just yeah, I just feel like I hope there will not be a crush, but at the same time, I just don't know.
Don't know what to do.
Yeah,
Don't know what we don't know what we can do either.
yeah, I mean, I have showed this example regarding it's so hard for a young generation or for a working class person to buy a basic condo
Yeah.
in today's world
At at the metropolitan city. Yeah.
at a metropolitan city. So who will be the future buyers of all those houses starting like
Sugar daddies,
1.5 and 2
sugar
2
daddies
million?
and sugar daddies and sugar mamas.
Yeah, I just maybe we hope like we have more like people with money will be immigrate to Canada or whatever. So maybe that's one of the solutions. But
Is that the solution? I don't think that's the solution though.
yeah, I don't think that's the solution. So I don't really know what's the future, which means
Uh,
who can buy those houses. So I'm not sure if you're aware that the recent listing of those expensive houses are skyrocketing, especially
mm,
after the central bank is cutting the rates and everything.
mm-hmm.
But the trading or the actual transaction number is getting lower and lower.
Like there's less people buying.
Yeah, there's less people buying and there's more people listing. And there are many houses, especially in those expensive areas. It's it's very like low activities and stuff.
Yeah, I think because the demand will go down, the prices will slowly go downwards, but I don't know. Like, I don't think it will go down just because that is mm, how do I say it? Like maybe that is the norm, because if it goes down, people will start buying again, right?
Hmm, hmm.
So if people just basically freezes, then like that's just how the market is for now until something happens. Something needs to give. So I don't know, man. There's no answers to this, but
Hmm.
if you are in this situation yourself, I hope that you are taking care of yourself to focus on what is important to you. And sometimes if you need to live in a prime city like Vancouver, Toronto, New York, San Francisco,
Yeah.
um, I don't know. There's just sometimes just have to have sacrifices, and in terms of
Hmm.
your comfort will be sacrificed, and to be able to live in a fabulous city like the ones I just named, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
you got to pick your battles and make sure these things don't really drive you off the wall. And if you're still here, thank you for listening. And thank you for tuning into Pondering Pandas. If you like this episode, please share it with your friends, give us a comment and a review. Please be kind. This would really help us grow. We
Yeah.
really appreciate you pondering with us today. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
See you
Bye.
next time.